Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. If you're new here, consider subscribing. It really helps keep these stories coming. And while you're here, let me know in the comments where you're listening from. Now, sit back, relax, and let's get into the story. I'm a janitor at a secret lab who survived the first 12 hours of the zombie outbreak. My job was simple: keep my head down, clean up. I was just a janitor at Blackwood Research Facility, a high-security underground lab that didn't officially exist. They didn't tell me what they did there. They didn't have to. My clearance level was mop and bucket, not classified information. All I knew was that whatever they were working on wasn't normal. The scientists walked the halls in full protective gear. Armed guards stood outside doors I wasn't allowed to enter, and sometimes I'd hear sounds, not human sounds, but I didn't ask questions. I needed the job. That night started like any other. I had my earbuds in, pushing my cart down the long, sterile hallways, scrubbing floors that were already spotless. The graveyard shift was quiet, and that's the way I liked it, until the alarms started blaring. A robotic voice echoed through the halls. "Containment breach detected. All personnel evacuate immediately." I pulled out my earbuds, heart pounding. A breach? That had never happened before. The emergency lights kicked in, red and flashing, casting long shadows across the white walls. I saw people running. Scientists in lab coats pushing past each other, some of them covered in something dark. Security guards barking orders, their rifles raised. Then I saw Dr. Patel, one of the head researchers. She wasn't running. She was limping, clutching her arm. Her face was pale, her hands trembling. "Hey, what's going on?" I called out. She turned toward me, and that's when I saw her eyes. Bloodshot, unfocused. Something was wrong. Before I could say another word, one of the guards grabbed me. "Move now!" "What's happening?" I asked. The guard didn't answer, but I heard it. A sound I'll never forget, a guttural snarl, wet, ragged breathing. Footsteps, but not normal ones. Then, screaming. The guard shoved me toward the exit. "Go! If you want to live, don't stop running." I ran. Down the hall, past the offices, past the break room where my half-eaten sandwich still sat on the table. I reached the elevator and slammed my hand on the button. Nothing. The power had been cut. That's when I saw them. The things chasing us. They used to be people, scientists, lab workers. But their skin was gray, their veins dark, their movements unnatural. Their heads jerked like puppets with broken strings. Some moved on all fours. Their eyes, glassy and empty, locked onto us. One of the guards opened fire. The sound echoed down the hall. I covered my ears. The creatures staggered but didn't stop. I turned and ran for the stairwell. The emergency exit was 5 floors up. I just had to make it. I took the steps 2 at a time, heart hammering. Behind me, I heard the guards screaming. The gunfire stopped. I didn't look back. I reached the 3rd floor when the lights flickered. The building shook, like something big had hit it from below. Then, silence, too quiet. I pressed myself against the wall, breathing hard. I had to think, where could I go? The main exit was probably swarming with whatever those things were. The security room? Maybe I could find a weapon. Then I heard it, a slow, dragging sound. Something was coming up the stairs. I peeked over the railing. There it was. A scientist in a shredded lab coat, one arm twisted at an impossible angle. His jaw hung open, unhinged like a snake's. He wasn't blinking. He was looking right at me. I didn't have time to think. I bolted up the stairs, skipping entire flights. My legs burned, but I didn't stop. I hit the 5th floor. The security office was just ahead. I fumbled with the keypad, wrong code. My hands were shaking too hard. I tried again. Beep, green light. I threw myself inside and slammed the door. The room was empty, thank God. Security monitors lined the walls, most of them static, but a few still worked. I saw what was happening outside. The lab wasn't just dealing with an outbreak, the whole city was. Fires, collapsed buildings, people running in the streets, being chased. This wasn't just happening here, it was everywhere. And I was trapped underground with no way out. Here's the second part of your creepypasta. I stood frozen in the security office, staring at the monitors. The city was in chaos. Fires raged in the streets. People ran for their lives, some making it, others not. But I wasn't out there. I was trapped underground with them. A loud bang on the door snapped me back to reality. I turned just in time to see the metal buckle inward. Something was hitting it hard. That scientist, the one I saw on the stairs, it had followed me. I grabbed a chair and jammed it under the handle, backing away slowly. My eyes darted around the room. I needed a weapon, something. That's when I spotted it. A nightstick strapped to the side of a fallen security guard. His body was still slumped against the wall, his head tilted at an unnatural angle. His ID badge read J. Ramirez. "Sorry, man," I muttered, reaching down. I grabbed the nightstick just as Ramirez's hand twitched. My breath caught, his fingers flexed, his head rolled to the side, and those glassy, lifeless eyes locked onto me. No. No, no, no. I stumbled back as he let out a low, gurgling breath. His neck, broken, twisted, shouldn't have been able to move, but it did. I barely had time to react before he lunged. I swung the nightstick instinctively. It cracked against his skull, knocking him sideways. But he didn't go down. I scrambled backward as he reached for me, his mouth stretching open, his teeth snapping inches from my face. I swung again, harder. This time I didn't stop. I hit him again and again and again until he finally collapsed. My chest was heaving, my hands shook. He wasn't human anymore, none of them were. A loud crash behind me reminded me I didn't have time to process it. The thing at the door was getting in. I had to move. I yanked Ramirez's ID badge off his chest and bolted out the back exit just as the door behind me burst open. The hallway was pitch black. The power was failing. I switched on my phone's flashlight, the small beam cutting through the darkness. The emergency exit wasn't far. I just had to... A sound, not growling, not snarling. A whisper. I spun around, nothing. The air was thick, too still. Then I heard it again. A faint, distorted whisper. Not a voice, voices. I knew I shouldn't stop. I knew I should keep moving. But I turned the corner anyway, and that's when I saw it. A window into one of the restricted labs. The glass was cracked, but I could still see inside. The room was dark except for a few flickering emergency lights. But the walls were covered in writing. Not with ink. I swallowed hard, stepping closer. That's when I saw them. 5 figures standing completely still in the center of the room. They weren't moving. They weren't breathing. Their heads were tilted up, mouths open, like they were listening to something I couldn't hear. Then, all at once, they turned. Not just their heads, their entire bodies. They were facing me now, and they smiled. I stumbled back, heart hammering. That's when a hand grabbed my shoulder. I swung the nightstick blindly, connecting with something solid. It was Dr. Patel, but she wasn't herself anymore. Her mouth snapped open wider than it should have been, her eyes bulging, veins dark against her pale skin. I didn't think, I ran, past the lab, past the offices. The whispers were getting louder. I saw the emergency exit ahead, locked. Ramirez's ID, I fumbled with it, my hands slick with sweat. Beep, green light. I shoved the door open just as something cold grazed the back of my neck. I didn't look back. I ran up the emergency staircase 2 steps at a time. The door at the top was cracked open, daylight streaming through. I burst outside and stopped. The world I had known was gone. The city skyline was thick with smoke. Sirens blared in the distance, but no one was coming to help. The streets below were filled with them. Some moved in packs, others stood still, waiting. And in the distance, towering above the burning city, I saw something else, something bigger, something that wasn't human. And then, it turned its head, not toward the city, toward me. I backed away, heart pounding. I had survived the first 12 hours, but I knew this was just the beginning. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe. Your support keeps these creepypastas coming. Until next time, stay alert, stay safe, and never ignore the feeling that something is watching.